Hey everybody, welcome back to Outpost Gray. I'm so excited to see the room already filling up. Outpost Gray is a YouTube channel designed to provide you information in cybersecurity, innovation, technology, and even sometimes a little personal development and growth, just like the episode that we have today. And I am so thrilled with the guests that we have on the show today. It is going to be a super dynamic episode. I would even encourage you, go grab a notebook. This show's is going to be all about figuring out noble purpose. What is the difference between an ego versus a purpose-driven goal? So if you're like one of those people like myself, and maybe you're not, and you're coming on here right now and you're trying to figure out, we're into February right now, and a lot of the New Year's resolutions are starting to die off. And maybe you're one of those people that do those New Year's resolutions, or you're like myself and our guests that I'm going to be bringing on, where we have what we call enduring goals. Well, we're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about why New Year's resolution goals fail. And we're going to give you tips and tricks on how to better prepare yourself with your goal setting and how to really define those goals. So I'm really, really excited. The guest we have, and I'm going to be bringing her on, and she's going to do her own intro, but Elizabeth is amazing. She is a LinkedIn learning instructor. She talks all the time about noble purpose. She actually co-authored a book, which we'll be talking about in a little bit detail during this episode. But I would ask you, make sure that you throw your questions in the chat. Use a big Q so I can filter them out. We're going to be running this for an hour, so pick Elizabeth's brain as much as you can. She is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm just glad that she made enough time to come and share her knowledge with all of you in the community. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring her on. Hello. Welcome to the show. The room is already filling up. I'm super excited. How are you feeling about this? You ready to rock and roll?
I'm feeling great. I'm so happy to be with you. Everybody in the chat, your cat, this is going to be fun.
I know Cooper has lately just been chilling out over here. I love this guy. He is literally, I don't know if you have any animals, anybody in the audience that have animals, they're like your children in a way. And he is actually sick a few weeks ago, and I had to take him to the ER, but he's chilling. He's like a dog. He literally will never leave my side. If he's here, he's on my lap, or I've got his own green office chair sitting like right over there. Yeah.
Well, you might see my pet child Carrot walk on into the stream. We'll see how it goes.
I love this. Brian's like, Cooper rocks. Yay. Well, let's jump into it. So let's first start off by sharing a little bit about your very impressive background and how you got to where you're at today, and really being the driving force around like noble purpose.
Well, I'm Elizabeth Lotardo. As you said, I have a background in advertising originally and transitioned into consulting about 6 years ago. How I got on noble purpose was a few different paths. One, I knew that I needed a sense of purpose in my own life. And this is something you and I have talked about. I knew that there was more than just a revenue target. There was more than a career goal that needed to push me. And then secondly, I started seeing that in the world. And at the time, my mom, who I work with closely, was conceptualizing leading with noble purpose. So all the stars kind of aligned. We worked together on selling with noble purpose and eventually became together LinkedIn Learning instructors. Now we run a consulting firm called McLeod & More. So that's the 10,000 foot view of where I am. But today I work with all kinds of organizations on both sales and leadership and bringing a sense of purpose to the fore in both of those arenas.
Yeah, so interesting that you work together with your mom. Have you guys always had, I'm just curious, this is kind of off goal setting, but it's relevant. We'll get back to it. But have you guys always had that really good relationship? Because going into business with family can be a little dicey.
Going into business with anyone can be a little dicey.
True.
But we have always had a good relationship. And I think to kind of bridge this gap in goal setting, we have a great relationship, but the two of us think about goals really differently. Lisa, my mom, has a background in hardline sales. I have a background in advertising. So two kind of different sides, one more conceptual, one more hard driving, but both of us are really goal oriented. And I think that's something we can explore in this conversation is how do you bring your authentic self to goal setting and not try and morph yourself into something that doesn't feel true to you.
Oh my God. Yes. There's so much we're going to be covering. And I love like the authentic self. Let's peel that back a little bit. Like what do you mean when you're saying bring your authentic self to the table to when you're creating goals? What does that mean to you?
So to me, bringing your authentic self to goal setting conversations, either a conversation or a talk track you're having with yourself, means something that ignites you and feeds your spirit and doesn't feel exhausting. I think you and I talked about this before the show. If you set a goal, an ego-driven goal based on what you think the world wants of you, you're going to feel really tired. And that's why a lot of people burn out on their goals in February, which is what we're seeing now. So I think being in touch with who you are, your unique strengths, the impact you want to have on the world, that can push you to set a really meaningful goal and one that you're going to stick with more than just what you think you should be doing.
Mm. So for me, like finding that meaning, finding that purpose, that noble purpose in your life can be really challenging because we talked about this prior to the show about the ego driven versus the purpose driven. And until recently, within the last few years, a lot of my goals were ego driven. But for me, it took me doing a lot of self-reflection and figuring out who I was and who I wanted to be, not what I thought I needed to be for my parents or my friends or the world as a whole. But there are people that they create goals, and I feel like a lot of them are ego driven because there's a lot of influence by the world. Like cybersecurity is an example. A lot of individuals get into cybersecurity and they want to go into pen testing, but when they do, like a self-reflection, they realize that their personality and their intellect, maybe that's not the best fit for them. Maybe going into a different area, GRC or even cyber threat intel might have been a better fit, but they were so into pen testing because that's that's the sexy area of cybersecurity. So how can somebody, it's like, God, but how do I bring my authentic self to my goal setting? How do I find that? How do I find my purpose? Are there any tips, anything that you can provide that helps guide a person to get to that point?
It's a pretty big question, right? Like, how do I find my purpose?
Yeah.
To me, a great way to get in touch with your purpose is pay attention to what's giving you energy and also pay attention to what's sucking your energy. So you and I chatted about an example that I think is really relevant here, which is grad school. And both of us went into that endeavor with an ego-driven goal. At least I know I did. I signed up for grad school and paid for it, not because I was so fascinated and wanted to learn, not because I felt like I could provide so much more value if I had that knowledge. It was because primarily I wanted initials after my name. I wanted to feel like I belonged in the room with the people I was with and that I had the authority to speak. But I think something both of us experienced through the grad school journey is that that's not enough to sustain you. It's really hard. I even did it online before COVID. And to have an ego-driven goal jumpstart you can work. It definitely got us both into the programs, but you have to have a desire for more lasting impact in order to stick with it. So that's where I think, like, how can I find my purpose and make impact-driven goals? Pay attention to what is filling your spirit and point your goals in that direction. Otherwise, it's just going to be like a huge slog.
Yeah. Point yourself in the direction that's talking to your spirit, to your soul. And what's interesting is both of us started with an ego-driven goal with grad school, but we pivoted that into a purpose-driven goal. How did you do that with your grad school? When was your turning point where you realized, and did you have that moment of realization, or was it gradual and then you look back on it and now you're able to see it started with an ego and turned into a purpose?
For me, it was really gradual. And I think it is for a lot of people. There's no big moment of reckoning. But through the grad school process, I started to see myself actually using what I was learning, which sounds stupid because, like, that's the whole point, right? But I saw myself actually applying the knowledge and making an even bigger difference to my clients. I saw my training sessions get more creative. I saw myself think more holistically in consulting projects. And my grad school program was organizational psychology, so designed to do a lot of those things. And when you start to get the positive reinforcement based on your impact instead of your ego, no one's like, you're a third of the way to the MA. You must be smart. Like, nobody says that. But when you start to see the impact, it enables you to stick with it. And I think that's where the transition between ego-driven goals and purpose-driven goals can really start to take hold.
Mm. So let's use, New Year's resolution goals are typically around losing weight a lot of times. And those are a lot of times ego driven. And if somebody comes into that thinking, okay, I'm going to lose weight, and they know that it's ego driven, are there some things that they can do that can help them think about, like a better way of asking that is, how can somebody identify if it's ego driven versus purpose driven? Are there questions that they can ask themselves that'll help them identify that their goal right now is not, they didn't come to the table authentically when they created that goal?
That's a good question. And I think it comes down to asking yourself, if I am completed with this goal, if I lose weight, if I, finish grad school, whatever it is, once that's done, what has changed?
Mm-hmm.
And let's take the example of losing weight, like the most common New Year's resolution. I think that one could be an ego-driven goal or a purpose-driven goal. You can want to lose weight to, flame everybody at your high school reunion. That's probably an ego-driven goal. Or you can want to lose weight so you can better show up for the people in your life, so you can contribute more to your community. I think they both have, or both sides of that goal can be realistic, but I would argue that the person who has an end state that is less self-focused, less purely vain, is going to be in the gym a lot longer than the person who's like, I'm going to show up to my high school reunion and they're not going to know what hit them. That's just not going to fulfill you the way a lasting impact-driven goal will.
Yeah, I know back in the day, I never did the weight loss, but I used to be a personal trainer, and I would have clients come in and they were just very, very much ego driven, and they would always die off within the first 4 to 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the biggest thing is just when you sit down and you create these goals, you think about, okay, we'll go back to grad school. So going back to grad school, what is the graver impact that this is going to have when I finish my freaking 3 years that I feel like I'm in right now, never ending grad school? What are the impacts going to be on my community? What my goal is on my family? How is that going to look? And then at that point in time, depending on how that resonates with me, then I can decide, is this an ego driven, I just want to do it to check a box, have a letter after my name, or is this really the path that I want to take because it's going to have a really big impact on my life? And I like that. I think that's a huge help for being able to figure out and sit down and say, okay, where am I at right now? And maybe anybody that's listening to this right now that's thinking, okay, some of my goals for the year were definitely ego driven. Do you think that maybe you started your goal setting and it was ego driven? Are there times that you just need to stop and say, okay, I can't change this goal from being ego driven into purpose because it's just so self-centered? What do? Do you just like, okay, I'm just going to scratch it and start over, or just scratch and get rid of it? I mean, sometimes you look at that as like failure. What are your thoughts around that when somebody runs into that wall where they're like, wow, all my goals are ego driven, I don't know what to do right now?
Well, that can be a sobering moment if you're hitting that wall. But I mean, let's be real. People are complex and we have multiple motivations. I drew this kind of false dichotomy on LinkedIn of an ego-driven goal versus a purpose-driven goal. And the more complicated reality is a goal can be a little bit of both. And sometimes your ego is going to push you, but more often than not, you need to identify how that goal is going to impact someone else for that lasting, sustained motivation. So I think if you are thinking about your goals and you're setting goals for the new year, asking yourself, who is this going to impact? Mm-hmm. How are my colleagues, my families, my customer, my community? How are all of those people going to be different? And if no one is different except you in all of those goals, try and really push yourself to have goals that impact other people too, because we know that as human beings, we want to make a difference. We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And if you don't give yourself that gift, your motivation is going to wear out real quick, like February 1.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of goals that hit that brick wall right around February 1. And I hope anybody that's listening to us, if they've hit that wall and they're like, oh my gosh, I really, because I don't believe that your desire of wanting to lose weight and it shouldn't go away. I think there needs to be a refinement on how you're approaching it,
right?
And looking at it, because it's really a mindset, is goal setting, everything like, and we'll talk about the books that you have behind you, but it's really goal setting and defining your noble purpose is a mindset. It's a way of looking at things. And when you shift from being ego driven into purpose driven, It's your mindset around those goals and the impacts that they have. So the energy that you're putting out, everything, there's a larger impact, where when it's very much ego driven, it's just you, and it's not going to last as long. So you've got to, I almost say, fill into your goals. Like when you sit down and start working through your goals, like, how does this goal make you feel? Does it make your body tense up when you think about having to lose weight? But maybe, and correct me on this, what if you look at losing weight because you want to have more energy for your kids? Think about the goal is not losing weight, but it's, my goal is to have more energy for kids. That's your goal. Instead of weight loss, it'll get to weight loss, but you change the goal and you change the way that you view it. I think that is a huge help too, because you still have an end result. The weight loss is the sub of your overall, I want to have energy for my children.
I definitely agree with that. And again, we're not talking about changing goals entirely, just refining how we view them and keeping ourselves motivated by tapping into how our goals impact other people. I'll go and give an example in my world, the sales world, selling with noble purpose up here on my shoulder. So in sales, you are measured very quantitatively. And a lot of times that metric starts over at the end of the year. So no matter how great you did in 2021, you're looking at 2022 in a lot of cases with a big fat 0. And that can make you feel exhausted, especially if you were already tired, which is what we're seeing in salespeople across the board now, especially when selling remotely. But if you look at 22 and say, okay, no, I have this revenue number that I have to hit. Back to the weight loss example. I know there's this quantitative thing, but why am I doing it? I know if I hit that revenue number, I'll be able to have a huge impact on my client base. My organization will change for the better. I will have more personal financial freedom. All of these pillars that result as a result of you attaining that core quantitative goal, that's where we want to put our brain space, because it's energizing, it's compelling, it's a little bit more altruistic than just succumbing to this, I have to do this thing. In sales, a lot of times people say heroes to zeros at the end of the year, which is just speaking directly into the heart of, I have to do it all again. And that sucks your energy when it's only the number at stake.
Oh my gosh, I wouldn't. Yeah, being in sales is been, I've heard, grueling the last couple of years, because it's all virtual. You're constantly on the go. You don't have that break, and a lot of the sales like requirements are going up, and that's tough. That would be really, really tough to know every year you're going to have to reset. And it would also be hard not to have an ego-driven goal within sales, to want to hit that certain dollar amount and that salary. But it goes back to like refining it. Why do you want that salary? To have a better quality of life for your children or your family, to be able to send your oldest kid to a private school, and really refining and like really digging into those goals to understand. Because you may be just making that money and it could go into ego, because you're making that money because as a child you were in a place of lack. So you don't really need that money. Your family's doing really well, but in your mind you're constantly thinking, nope, I have to reach this amount because this shows my worth. And that's where it goes back to like, is this an ego or is this a purpose-driven goal?
Well, and I think it gets weird when we bring in money, right? A lot of people are weird about money. And there's a quote that I really resonated with that kind of helped me see that the desire to make money and be financially prosperous is not inherently evil. But we have to recognize that the way you become financially prosperous is making a difference to other people. So I pulled this quote up before our show. I'm going to read it out. It's from a book called Thou Shalt Prosper, which is all about like people's relationships with money. And the quote is this: take out a dollar bill and look at it. Now pat yourself on the back because you are looking at a certificate of performance. If you did not rob or steal from anyone to get that dollar, if you didn't defraud anyone or persuade the government to seize it from someone and give it to you, you could have only gotten that dollar one other way. You must have pleased someone. And I love that quote because I think what it does so beautifully is it marries our desire to be financially prosperous people, which is not inherently bad, with our subsequent desire to make a difference in this world. And I believe the two are really connected to each other.
Yeah, I love it. Kimberly, that's spot on. Yes, money does us no good if we're not willing to use it for helping someone else achieve success. It's so true. Giving, that's something that I came from a place, my family lifestyle when I was growing up was very much in the mindset of lack. We had enough, we could have had more. However, I was taught that we never had enough, so money always just kind of like fell through your fingers. And then,
Mhm.
the saying, money doesn't grow on trees. And so instead of helping people, it would always be like kept in, and like we didn't share food. There was a lot of things in my family we didn't share because it was just you're in that place of like lack and you don't have enough. And I think that that is a really critical point that you just covered, is like changing again your mindset of how we look at money. And it's very much mindset. Do you, in your books, do you talk about mindset? Is that something that's covered in the power of the mindset?
Absolutely. Selling with noble purpose is all about mindset. And it really goes back to that quote. We know when we show up for somebody else, when we really lean into them, when we want to make a difference for them, we are better salespeople, better leaders, better individuals, no matter the avenue. Selling with noble purpose is about channeling that in sales, but it can really be applied to any vertical. When you show up for something bigger than yourself, all the brain science tells us you're more creative, you're more innovative, you're more strategic, and you will actually, at the end of the day, make more money as a result of it. So it's all about channeling that desire to serve and pointing it in a really impactful direction.
Yeah, noble purpose. You've got two books behind you. You co-authored one of them. Yep, you co-authored one of them with your mom, and then the other one your mother wrote.
Yep.
What inspired you to want to co-author this book? Was this something that you both had decided and talked about even before going into the publishing process?
So, selling with noble purpose is something that we were teaching a lot, something that we were seeing a huge interest in from the sales space, because I think in sales in particular, there is this terrible false dichotomy between the money and the meaning. And people think that sales is all about, pushing buttons on a cash register and convincing people to do things that they don't need to do. And it has a really slimy reputation. But what I believe and what I know Lisa, my mother, believes is sales is an opportunity to serve. Sales is a noble profession where you build relationships and help people who need help solve problems. It's one of the few professions where we let the people who do it really badly have too loud of a voice. So I think we had a mutual desire to reframe that profession for the larger world and restore nobility to something that we think is not only really crucial for the economy, but really crucial for individual people and their relationships.
Mm-hmm. That is, yeah, very good point. Chip made a comment. This is interesting, even though we're not talking about so much money, but this is definitely mindset. So what happens if you grow up poor? Money's everything. Money imposes more greed. It's very much that hoarding mentality, the lack. It goes back to like mindset. I'll tell you from my experience, it's hard to change that mindset, but it's absolutely possible. But it takes a lot of work and self-reflection to understand why you feel because you can sense it and feel it in your body when you come really connected with yourself. But then why do you see money that way? Why do you view it as greedy, or money doesn't grow on trees and money is the root of all evil? Like, I hate those sayings. Yeah, what are your thoughts around that? If somebody grows up poor, and then they get into adulthood and they're very ego driven within the way that they make money, how do they shift that?
It's an interesting question. And I think it's something that plays out in a lot of ways. And I did not grow up poor. I grew up like very middle class. But I think the same thing could be applied to status, right? And sometimes middle class families, it's all about status, how many initials you have after your name, what you've accomplished, the awards you've gotten. So whatever we lacked in our childhood, whatever wasn't quite to the point where our families felt like it needed to be, I feel like we have a propensity to really grab onto that and become almost obsessive with it. And that could be money if there wasn't enough money in your family. That could be educational prestige if there wasn't enough education in your family. It could really be anything. But I think what's important to think about when we reflect on goal setting is back to where we started this conversation. Is that goal your goal because it feels your spirit, because it makes a big difference to people? Those are the questions that we have to reflect on. And if the answer is no, there's some unpacking to do there.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I like Kim. I like this. She said, I grew up poor, but my parents always gave, even when all they had was their skills and ability. I found when they had some money, it helped them give and help even more. Yeah. It's very true. And then Chip said, I grew up in a trailer park and money imposed a way out. Yeah, absolutely. And that was your goal. Like, if that was your goal to get out, then you had a purpose. You had a purpose to get out. It wasn't entirely ego driven. As you wanted to have a better life than you had before. And so you had a purpose behind it. You felt it in your core, and you made it happen. So you're extremely successful in what you do, and you're a high achiever, and somebody that's a high achiever myself. We know that it's all about goal setting. It's all about enduring goals, and it's about like having our goals really align with our long-term vision and dreams. Like everything is like a mathematical equation. I have like a 72-inch board or something white. It's massive. I have a huge whiteboard over there. I don't even own a TV, but I have a massive whiteboard for writing down my goals, seeing them. I have stickers all over the place of all my goals. So what do you do? What is your strategy? Do you set New Year's resolutions? Do you have enduring goals? What does that look like for you to ensure that you stay aligned with what you're doing and you're in line with your noble purpose?
So I do not have a New Year's resolution. And I know from our pre-show chat that you don't have a resolution either. To me, and I haven't called them enduring goals before, but I think we're on the same page with that. I tend to have a theme that I work on for the year. And the theme for my year this year is scalability. My mom and I have had a great couple of years doing purpose-driven consulting, but we're reaching a point where capacity is the biggest issue. So my primary goal, enduring goal to use your term, is scalability. But where I think people get in trouble with goal setting is being a little bit too rigorous. Not that you don't need some type of rigor, and obviously I have a couple of ideas on how we can scale, but I think being overly rigorous and putting yourself too much in a box does a couple of things. One, you might be underestimating yourself if you put your rigorous goal too narrow. But I also think it can dampen your creativity and make you feel like a failure if perhaps you didn't have the right avenue to achieve that goal in the first place. Maybe it looked a little different. So I think that's kind of where people get in trouble with New Year's resolutions is they make them so granular and so specific that if you don't do it that exact way, you feel like a total failure and it's easier to just give up. But if you have an enduring goal, a theme for your work that you're pushing towards, it's really harder to give up because there are so many avenues you could take to achieve that.
Yeah. How do you keep yourself aligned? Do you have stickers around the house? Do you set
I'll flip you around,
Yeah,
and I'm in your fellow whiteboard club. Let's see. Can you see mine?
Oh my God, I love it. Yes. Yes.
So I am in the whiteboard club too. And on my whiteboard, I have a whole section called internal goals, which are just that, exactly what I want to be accomplishing this year. And I look at it every single day. It's right above my computer. I love this comment, smart goals and small steps. I have a mixed view on SMART goals. What's your view on SMART goals, Jax?
Yeah. So we actually have the SMART goal framework within our book, the Cybersecurity Career Master Plan. Anybody watching this hasn't picked it up, want to get into cybersecurity, definitely pick it up. There's my shameless plug. But okay, so my thoughts around it. I have used it. I don't currently use it. I think it's a great starter for people that don't know how to do goals. I think it's a great tool set. But for me, it limits me. It limits my creativity. It like puts me too much in a box. So I don't use it anymore. But I feel like it's a great tool to give to people because there's so much resource around it. You can Google and get all those resources. So I think it's a great goal for new people that are trying to really get defined goals. But I can tell you don't like it very much, so tell me why.
Well, I have mixed feelings. I agree with your sentiment that it's a really good starting point. And if you're staring at a blank piece of paper, it can help that feel a lot less overwhelming. But back to making limiting goals and having limiting beliefs. I think the challenge with SMART goals is they are so specific and so time bound. It can like really dampen your creativity and dampen your innovation. So I think there's pros. I think there's cons. I wrote an article called Why SMART Goals Are Stupid, and maybe it was called Why SMART Goals Don't Work and What to Do Instead. But that's more just poking fun. I do think it's a realistic framework. I think it can be helpful in the beginning, but you're right. I don't think it's a long-term strategy.
No, and anybody that's listening to this, it's like, wow, okay, maybe I'll go check it out. Yeah, check it out. There's all different types of techniques. I think it's a great starter, but don't let yourself be bound by the time. And the other thing, I think a really good book with goal setting is called Getting Things Done. And I cannot remember the author, but I think it's called Getting Things Done. Do you know what book I'm talking about?
I think so. I think I might even have it. I'll look.
Yeah, it's a very well-known book for like I'll have to look it up. But yeah, anyway, it's Getting Things Done, but it talks about how to organize current work, and understanding goals for your day, but then also long term. So knowing, okay, I want to get this done in 2 weeks. It comes to 2 weeks, and being okay with saying, you know what, other things are going to take priority. So I'm going to move this to 3 months from now. And that's all part of like those you've got macro, micro goals, but they all play in together. So for me, I have goals all over the place, but then I have a Notion board that I keep all my goals on, that I look and I update. And then I have sticky notes in my bathroom that remind me of where I'm going and what my goals are. And then I usually pick like 3 really kind of big goals for the year that I want to accomplish, but they're not just haphazard goals. Like I'm not like, for example, I'm going to play at the Kennedy Center. I play piano. So I'm not like, I'm going to play at the Kennedy Center this year. It would be something like, I want to have a TED Talk because I've done all these speaking engagements and I've been communicating with people. I've done TED Talks, and that's one of my goals for this year. It's lofty as heck, but I know even if I don't reach it, I will make contacts with people that are in the TED Talk space, and I will start getting my talk more and more refined from where it is now. And I might hit it in a year from now. So that's kind of like, how does that look for you? How do you like constantly keep yourself motivated and updated to know like where you're going with your goals and what they look like for you?
Well, I think there are a couple of approaches you can take. I love your sticky note, like bathroom mirror, I'm assuming, approach to that constant calibration. And I'm the exact same way, which is why I have to have mine right in front of my face all day. And I think the physical reminder of what your goal is really important in how likely you are to achieve it. And I think it kind of relates to this question in the chat, which is, how do you feel about bullet journal approaching to long-term goals? I don't know what bullet journal goal setting looks like, but the fact that it's in a journal kind of makes me perturbed by it. I've not had good success with journals. I feel like they're easy to close and then you put them away and you forget about them and they never see the light of day again. So to me, making sure you're on track with your goal and making sure you're pushing forward does depend on some type of physical reminder, whether it's in your office, whether it's your screensaver, whether it's a sticky note on your bathroom mirror. Physical reminders is something I rely on a lot.
Yeah, that is a really good question. I had somebody tell me about bullet journals, and I have a ton of journals. And they have dots, but you'll have to explain that in a little bit more detail, Requiem, on what you're asking, because I'm curious, maybe share a link or something on the bullet journals. But I too am not, I have journals. They're kind of all over the place. And I used to in my life, there was a period where I journaled every morning, and I did the Tony Robbins thing, and I would journal at night, and it just became too much work for me. And it wasn't like, I didn't enjoy it. So I quit journaling, but when I need to journal, I journal. And then I just keep books, and they're color coded. I'm weird like that, but I have one for school. This one is for when I'm at my desk. Erica actually gave me this, and it sits at my desk. And when I have phone calls or anything, it doesn't leave my desk. This is my desk one. And then I have one for traveling. And so that's things that I have to remember, maybe I want to do, or whatever that is, but I'm always constantly writing it down or putting it on my phone notes. Oh, thanks, Kimberly. She shared my book. Yeah, I love her. Do you use, for your goal setting outside of the external things, I know there's like a lot of different apps and different tools that you can use. Do you use any of those? Do you know of any that you've heard of that work?
I'm like a grandma because I use the Notes app, the literal Notes app
on your phone
that comes on your iPhone is like, and it sounds silly, but I found it really works because it's always in your face, back to the whiteboard. So I feel like whatever works for you, be it a specific app. I've tried some apps like that. I haven't had a lot of success with the ones that like track your progress and give you daily reminders. I think the simpler the better for myself personally. But to me, writing out things you need to do in a way that is accessible to you increases the likelihood that you're going to get them done. So if you're someone who can commit to an app and someone who likes the Apple Watch reminder about your goals, go all in with that. But for me, it's really old school notes app and my whiteboard.
So this is a good question that Erica brings up. I like it. What are your thoughts on OKRs?
That's a big question.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, of course, Erica has to come in swinging.
Erica does come in swinging. We love you though, Erica.
Yeah.
So thoughts on OKRs. I feel like OKRs get a bad rap a lot of the time because they are so specific and so quantitative. I don't think they're necessarily a bad thing, especially as an organization, if you have organizational OKRs to align everybody. But I've not really seen many motivating ones, if that makes sense. I don't know about your opinion, Jax, but I tend to find them a bit dry.
Yeah, I always feel like I'm the weird person out on stuff like the SMART framework and OKRs. And in the military, you get your professional development career path, which is a career path designed specifically for your branch or your job in the military. And they give you all of these goals and things, schools, certifications if you're in a cyber position that you're supposed to accomplish by a certain rank, certain structure. And so then you receive a counseling statement. If it's a unit doing their job, this doesn't always happen. If there's veterans listening, they're like, that didn't happen to me. But what's supposed to happen is when you go into a unit, you have a leader that sits down with you and does basically OKRs. And it's part of your yearly counseling session where they sit down with you and they're like, okay, you're on your career path. You're an E3, you're moving to a 4 in the next, year. So you need to have these things done. You've accomplished these 2. So you need these done at this time. But it's really strict and rigid. And sometimes it doesn't allow common sense to take play. Like maybe that soldier isn't in that in a red team position, but one of the certifications is for him to get red team, but he might be on the help desk. So a different understanding how to look through sys logs and understanding administrative features or maybe access management class or something like that, because that's more of what he's doing or she is doing would make more sense. But it's very rigid. It's and then military, depending on your unit too, will sometimes not pay for you to attend a course that's outside of your career path unless you can justify it. So I think it's too rigid. I think that a good leader is going to have a high EQ. And Eric and I have talked about this, but it's they need to have a high EQ. They need to understand the intellect and the capabilities of the individual. And then what needs to get done in that department in the next 6 to 10 months. What's the scope of the company? Where are they going? What needs to be accomplished? That trickles down. And then that's when you create goals for that individual. So it's very personalized. I don't think OKRs are personalized. Really long answer to that.
But I definitely agree with that sentiment. I think OKRs can be a helpful framework to unite people, but I don't really think people wake up I can't wait to go hit my OKRs today. Everybody row in the same direction. I think it needs exactly what you said, the emotional intelligence, the context setting, the impact at the end to really actually motivate either yourself or a team you're leading.
Yeah. So let's kind of pull that layer back a little bit. Thanks to Erica. What are some challenges that you've seen in corporate America around goal setting? Because I can tell you from personal experience that happened to me when I worked at a fintech. Absolutely loved my boss, great guy to work with. One of the things that kind of was challenging for me is I remember a call specifically we were on, and we were talking, we had just created a strategy for the next 3 months per se. I think it was something like that. And the next thing you know, that had all been scratched on the call. And it was okay, so we're going to do this. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to do that for this week. Okay, so what about next week? Well, we're going to do that. And I'm like, okay, so what's our end goal in the next 30 to 60 days? And he was like, well, we're really just going to be fluid here. So we're just going to kind of go with the flow.
Corporate speak, we have no plan. Yeah.
I was like, one of the other guys that was in there was it was like 4 of us. He like messages me privately and he was like, he has no clue. And I'm like, oh my God. And I didn't push or pry because I was like, okay, whatever. But I'm like, that was frustrating. But I see that a lot of times in corporate America where it's either too rigid or it's not enough. So like, what have you seen, and what maybe everybody that's listening to this, we can be more of an evangelist around this to like create a better environment around goal setting and like overall mission success within like the unit structure of the organization.
Well, I think either extreme is not the answer, right? You brought up having absolutely no plan, and organizations like cling to this Richard Branson, build the plane on the way down. But like, he knew he was building a plane. He didn't go up there with a bunch of tools and start thinking, what can prevent me from falling? Like, so I think that expression gets taken to an extreme in a lot of cases, and people use it to justify a lack of strategic thinking, a lack of strategic clarity. But on the other hand, something that is too rigid, one, gives people almost no autonomy to think creatively, to own their piece, to be innovative. And secondly, a lot of times it just doesn't work. The world is changing too quickly, and we have to leave some room to flex and to adjust. If anyone made a 5-year plan in 2019 and that 5-year plan is playing out perfectly for you, let me know, because mine went into absolute flames.
Yeah.
Well, I think like, if you cling to OKRs, and I see Kimberly put in the chat KPIs, if you cling to them too rigidly, I think you cost yourself a real opportunity for growth.
100%. Yeah, I think that you nailed it. Flexibility is going to be key on all goal setting at all fronts of whatever you're doing in your life. If it's career, if it's academia, if it's family, it's fine to have a goal of like, I want to have a kid at this time and I want to do X, Y, and Z and I want to be married at this time. But it's also, what if you don't find that guy and you need a flex? I had a friend that she had it all planned out. She was going to get married at a certain age. She was going to be a flight surgeon. They were going to have a kid at this time, blah, blah, blah. And we're best friends. And fast forward to today, probably, God, I'll age myself like 15 years later. And she's married, no children, and a PA, physician's assistant, not a flight surgeon at all. And yeah, I mean, she's happy, she's making it work, but totally different plan than what she had originally had at like early 20s. So it's like, you got to flex, you got to be able to move around with it. So question for you, because you've got a lot of things going on your, and you're a LinkedIn. What does that actually explain? Like, what does it mean to be a LinkedIn learning instructor? What does that mean? What does that entail for you?
So a LinkedIn learning instructor is someone like myself who puts courses on LinkedIn Learning. So I work with the team on LinkedIn Learning to design a course. For example, one of the courses we have is Leading Without Formal Authority. So as a team, we map out what are the key skills involved with that? What's the need to know information? How will people know they're successful at leading without formal authority? And then we shoot a series of videos to deliver the lesson. And you can get them all with a LinkedIn Premium subscription. There's my little plug there. It is something I'm really passionate about. I think it's a really cool way to learn and something that you can do in the cadence of daily business. So I have lots of courses on LinkedIn Learning, on sales, on leadership, on just general being a person at work and trying to enjoy it.
Yeah, I was looking on your page. It says 15, but I'm guessing you probably have more instruction videos than you've done since then.
Called me out for an out-of-date LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's more than 15 now.
Yeah.
But, they are continuously updated, and there's tons of other really cool LinkedIn learning instructors. Dory Clark has some amazing courses on entrepreneurship and on personal branding. There's some great courses on time management by a guy named Dr. Do It, which is a super cool name that I'm jealous of. So you can learn literally anything on LinkedIn Learning, from time management to Excel. I'm pretty sure that photography and anything else you could possibly think of.
I love it. Yeah, Kimberly actually, she asked the question I was about to ask. She said, how did you get into creating course curriculums? Yeah, how did you get into all of that? Was that just a natural progression? Like, or was it one day was that a goal of yours that you wanted to do? Like,
well, it was not a goal of mine. And back to being flexible. If your goal is too rigid, you will say no to good opportunities. So how I started creating courses for LinkedIn Learning was I was actually with lynda.com which was an online learning company that got acquired by LinkedIn, and then LinkedIn got acquired by Microsoft. So I've been taken on this little journey. But how I got into creating courses was just thinking about, one, the way I learn is not by reading a book personally. And which sounds stupid because I have so many books behind me, but I feel like for more tactical things, it's really hard to get from a book. And then secondly, I was trying to figure out a way to deliver content that was accessible to people, that didn't depend on me getting on a 6 a.m. flight every day to go meet a new group of people. And it really checked a lot of boxes for me, both in the impact I wanted to make and how I wanted to live my life personally.
I love that. What are do you have any big projects, big things that you've got coming up this year that you can share with us, or are you keeping it under wraps?
That's interesting. Well, a lot of the big things I'm working on have to do with my clients, and out of respect for their privacy, I won't get into that too much. But I do have some cool ideas that I want to deploy on the course creation and the curriculum side. I don't know what avenue I'm going to use yet, but I have this idea for a choose your own journey course, where, like, say you're a leader and you are talking to your group of people. If you say this, they respond differently. And then based on that response, you get a different reaction. So kind of like gamified course creation.
Oh, I love it.
Sort of choose your own journey. So I'm still working out the logistics in my mind, but I think that's probably the next step in online learning.
Oh my gosh. So is that going to be hosted with LinkedIn, or is that going to be part of your business and what you're doing?
TBD. It's Elizabeth Lotardo's idea at the moment. So you heard it here first, but I'd love to partner with an organization who thinks that's a cool thing to do.
All right. Anybody listening wants to partner, there you go. So last and final words before I boot you off the stage and tell everybody about all the amazing things that we have coming up. What are the last and departing words you would like to share with everybody?
Goal setting should not be exhausting. If you look at your goals, and especially right after you set them and you feel tired, reassess why they are your goals. Reassess and try and find something. And maybe it's just a way of looking at that goal a little bit differently, like we talked about with the goal of weight loss. Reassess and find something that's going to fill your spirit, that's going to make you feel like you are making a difference in this world, that's going to ignite that sense of purpose in you. Because if you're just doing it to impress someone else or because it's what you think you should be doing, you're going to be burnt out. And even if you achieve it, you're not going to feel any type of way. So that is my final thought on goal setting for 2022.
I love that. That was passionate. So if any of the viewers want to be able to connect with you, reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing on LinkedIn, what is the best way they can contact you?
Yeah, add me on LinkedIn. I'm / Elizabeth Lotardo, just my name right here. I'm also on Twitter occasionally, but LinkedIn is where I put all my new content, and you can follow me on LinkedIn Learning too.
Yeah, make sure you follow her. Definitely. We'll definitely have you back. We've had her already on Erica's My Podcast. So go check out that interview. I think it posted, and we have your second one coming up like next week. We're going to have you on for round 2. We're going to dig into, yeah, it's going to be good. I mean, it's like this week, or it's close. It's a couple weeks. I don't remember, but we'll be seeing.
The calendar will tell us.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been amazing, girl. You're awesome. Keep kicking butt.
Thanks for having me back at you. And thanks for everybody in the chat for the awesome questions and engagement. This was really fun. I know goal setting can be kind of a nerve-wracking topic. And I think collectively, especially with Cooper, we made it a little bit more manageable.
Yeah. And go find those books. Go purchase the books, Amazon. So yeah, Elizabeth, you rock. Have a good one.
You too. See you soon.
Bye. Oh my gosh. So that was amazing. I am so glad that she was able to come on the show. So really quick, just to let you guys know about our lineup, a couple of admin things too. So next week, we are going to have Chip on the show. I am excited about that. We are going to have him on 10 February. So the very next Thursday, and we're going to be going live again from 3 to 4 p.m. So really excited about that. We're going to be talking about OT versus IT. So it's going to be a really interesting topic because a lot of people don't realize that there's a differentiation between OT and IT, and then some of the vulnerabilities that are impacted by OT. And then the following week, we have one of my favorite discussions, might be a little boring, but it's about technology and corporate law and how that's impacting our space that we're in and what it's going to look like in the next 3 to 5 years. And Jennifer Sanders is going to be on that one again, 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live streaming. And then at the end of February, we're going to be wrapping up with a very awesome, we'll call it sizzling GRC panel. You've got Erica McDuffie, you've got Jacob Horn, you've got Dr. Gerald Ogier, and you've got Linda Russ on the panel. So make sure you tune into that. We're going to be diving into GRC, really talking about frameworks, what is CMC, and then understanding the importance of getting the buy-in of the leadership into compliance. So really excited about all that. I also want to thank everybody who assisted with being part of the poll that I had, I think it was on Monday or Tuesday. If you haven't gone in and been selected a time or a day that you think would be great for the adjustment of these live streams, go ahead and do that. Right now we're at 3 to 4 p.m. EST, but I'm thinking about moving it to either keeping it on this day or shifting it to either in the morning at 8:30 in the morning Eastern Standard Time to 9:30, so right after Gerald's live stream, or shifting this one to the right 30 minutes, or moving it to Wednesday entirely and going from 4 to 5 p.m. EST. So right now, most of the votes have been for Thursday morning at 8:30 to 9:30, I think because of all my UK love that I have out there. So thank you for that. You guys are wonderful. Make sure if you haven't done so already, go and subscribe, like this video, and then please, it would mean the world to me if you shared it out. You guys are great. And last thing, let's go raid Gerald's live feed. So he's going on live at 4:30, and he is going to be interviewing Erica McDuffie, all things GRC. So you definitely don't want to miss that. So Simply Cyber, 4:30 EST going live. So I'll see you guys over there. You guys have a good one. Thanks.